Okay, let's get started. Thanks, Steffi, thanks, Jenna, and thank you for being here with us today. So let's have a conversation about Lean Inception. So the main message, think big, start small, learn fast. You have to do like Google did, Amazon, Zappos, Spotify, and so many other enterprises that no one started big. They all started small, but they learned really fast and then they become huge success. The agenda for today, I'll start sharing some context, and I'll share context about myself, what happened in my career where Lean Inception came along. And then we're going to look at the concepts of Lean Startup and MVP, abbreviation for Minimal Viable Product. Then we're going to go in a little more detail about the Lean Inception method itself. And then you're going to have a really good and large Q&A. So if you have any questions, write it down. If you want to write on the chat, it's okay, but we'll only cover those questions at the end. Context. So once again, I'm Paulo Caroli. I am Brazilian. I studied in computer science engineering. I did a master. And then in 2000, I went to Silicon Valley, where I lived for 8 years. When I got in Silicon Valley, I worked for a few startups. I do like the startup world, the startup movement. The one thing I did not like from the startups where I stayed from 2000 to 2006 is that we used to work for a long time building a product or a solution, and later we would try to find out if the users would use it. And the majority of the cases, it was not like that, so I would switch another startup. That was the old style of startups. In 2006, I joined ThoughtWorks. I really like Agile methodologies. I got along with Kent back in 2000 when I just arrived in the US. I used to follow him because of my master thesis, object-oriented architecture, this kind of stuff that Kent back. He used to be a small talk programmer before being really famous for extreme programming. So I was following a lot of Agile people. Therefore, I end up in ThoughtWorks, where there's a lot of Agile people, people that like Agile. A lot of them came to work on ThoughtWorks. When I joined ThoughtWorks in 2006, I was very impressed by the usage of the word inception. On my master thesis, I studied, and I really liked that initial phase of software development, analysis, and design. That was my main study. And when I joined ThoughtWorks, I realized that we are using the word inception, which means the beginning of a project. This came from Rupi, from IBM, 2001. We use inception in the terms of Agile. Agile teams start their work using the inception concept, where we'd get together for a few weeks, understand the whole picture, and then split it into the release plan. We're very influenced by Scrum methodology, and you'd break those into the user stories. The book from Icon is from 2003, User Stories Applied. So this was the main idea with the inceptions back then in 2006. I had the pleasure to work with Jeff Patton. He wrote the book User Story Mapping. We had similar view, and he would map the whole user journey to user stories. I also work with Jonathan Rasmussen. He wrote the book Agile Samurai. Later, he went to work for Spotify. And Jonathan's view on the inception was a lot of activities to understand the technology and some activities to understand the business. And he would mix quite a few of those over the course of a few weeks to kick off and quick start an Agile project. So I inherited this from Jeff Patton, Jonathan Rasmussen, and I became myself an inception facilitator. I really like facilitating stuff. And then in 2008, I moved to India. I kept facilitating inception for UK to India, to projects in India. 2010, I moved to Brazil. So I would travel to US, spend 3 weeks, facilitate inception, bring it back to Porto Alegre, a city in Brazil where I was living at. And then in 2011, my son was born. The moment my son was born, I had a constraint. I could not stay far from home for more than a week. And then I tried to shorten the length of the inception. And it was very hard because I was used to doing a lot of activities in the course of a few weeks. In the attempt to shorten the length of the inception, I need an excuse to go back home sooner. On that year, Eric Ries had released his book, his best-selling book now, I didn't know it back at the time, The Lean Startup. So I use the concept of Lean Startup, especially the concept of MVP, minimal viable product, as an excuse. Basically, I said, look, we're going to shorten the inception to only 1 week because now the focus is on the MVPs, not on the overall product. That did not work well in the first, I would say, quite a few inceptions. But after a few years, I tried to shorten the length of the inception. A sequence of activities went really well. And those are the ones I start sharing on the book Lean Inception. There's more information about me, Lean Inception, and other work I do, and especially like a lot of the sharing I do from the real life projects we do on ThoughtWorks on my blog, which is on karoli.org. So I gave you the context to understand where I come from, Agile, design thinking, Lean startup, why Lean Inception became a thing. In Brazil, the book became a bestseller really fast. And sorry for taking too long to translate it to English. I lived away from Brazil for 10 years. And then when I come back to Brazil, I decided to blog and write only in Portuguese. That's why a lot of this content was only in Portuguese. But I redeemed myself and now it is in English. And I've been sharing it in English since then. The whole idea of Lean Startup, it comes in 2011 and it complements old practice. We talk now more about product development than we did before. So the old style or the style we're more familiar, including a lot of us, we work on projects where we need to balance out during the time, the quality, the scope, and the resource at hand. That iron triangle, I remember this on my master thesis, like we had to figure out this iron triangle, like give me 3 and I'll tell the 4th variable. This was really used. There's a lot of theory on that, but like then the new world started working on this lean startup style product evolution based on validating your hypothesis, your idea, create an MVP, the minimum viable to validate, to get some insights and you keep on evolving, incrementing your product. They are complementing each other now. That's what's happening. Product meets project or product over project. So the whole idea on the Lean Startup book, which is an amazing for me, it's one of those books that shift the way you think about at least the digital world, was a very good book from the business perspective. Like you read the book and you're like, wow, it makes sense. I want to work this style, build, measure, learn. But I am a consultant, right? I have been a consultant for ThoughtWorks since 2006. So I would go to the corporations, a lot of them like large corporations, some of them like startups, and say, look, we need to figure out and understand what is the MVP. And they would tell me, yes, how do we align? How do we decide? How do we align this group of people about this? What is the MVP? So that's my book, Lean Inception. It's the practical experience on how to align a group of people to decide what is the MVP. Okay, so what is this concept, MVP, minimal viable product? MVP is the simplest version of a product that can be made available to users. You put in the user's hand to validate a business idea. That's what MVP is. I will give you quite a few examples, and I will use metaphors to talk about MVP. The first one, the cake and the cupcake. When I did my master thesis back in 1999, long ago, we used to talk that we are developing things on layers. Back on the days was only relational database, object-oriented was like the main thing, like Java and all the object-oriented languages. And then we were developing for the internet, which is mainly event-driven. So my thesis was about a 3-layer architecture. So when I got to US and we start running inceptions, agile inceptions, I would call, I still use the metaphor of a cake, but things have changed from the traditional to the more agile. Traditionally, we would try to understand the whole cake, design the cake with those 3-layer architectures, and then implement the cake for 6 months, a year, and then deliver the cake. With the agile methodologies, we still were building cakes. I was still facilitating inception to understand what is this overall cake, but we're agile. Then we would plan the releases and deliver user story by user story, and you say a user story is like a thin slice of the cake. Therefore, some people could taste the cake even before it's all done. That was for me the agile way of doing things before Lean Startup. When Lean Startup come along and I start facilitating the Lean inceptions, not only the inceptions, I get all confused because even though I want to have the vision of the cake, I'm not building cake. I'm building like cupcakes. And I like here the metaphor of a cupcake because the cupcake, it's really small. You have the vision of the cake, but the cupcake is something small. But you don't build only one cupcake. You might build 1, 2, 3 of different flavors. Why? Because you put it in front of the users to figure out which flavor the user like the most. So you decide, I will keep on evolving this thing with this flavor because that's what my users want. And another thing about the cupcakes, that the cupcake, each cupcake has the cherry on top. It's not like you only put the cherry when the cake is complete. Every single cupcake has a cherry. It's desirable, it's beautiful. The customer loves it as much as the cake, even though it's not a complete project. So that's the idea of the cupcake as MVP. What usually happens with me, and this happens like almost every other week that I'm facilitating a Lean Inception, I go to a client. No one invites you and the engineering team to say, hey, let's run an Inception to figure out a cupcake. No, they invite you, I need an Inception because I know I need a cake. Or in this other metaphor, I need a tractor to cut grass. We need an Inception because I do need a tractor to cut grass of Hamburg. There are a lot of grass in Hamburg in springtime. We're going to sell a lot of tractors to cut grass. So when you run an Inception, a Lean Inception of that group, not an Inception, a Lean Inception. Why? Because you want to align people about what is the MVP. Most likely you come up with MVP that's like a scissor or something much simpler to cut grass. Why? Because with this, you can validate your main business hypothesis. Is there like, if I build this thing to cut grass, will anyone buy it? Maybe they're going to say, I don't want to buy, I want to rent. Or I don't even want to rent. I want someone to come here, use that thing and cut my grass. Or even, do we really have grass to be cut? Maybe there's no grass. Maybe you took too long that the grass now are huge trees, or they're plastic grass, you don't need this. And like you had information that misleaded you. So that's the thing about MVP. It's about validating a business hypothesis. Therefore, you don't spend a lot of time building the overall vision, and you build something what? Minimal, the minimal viable that you can validate your business hypothesis. And you keep on evolving your product increment. So you go from hypothesis, either on the Lean Inception, you build this plan. Oh, I'm sure they're going to use the scissor, and then let me think what's the next increment and the next increment. Or most like what's happening today with the Lean Inceptions, you do have the vision of the tractor to cut grass, but you figure out what is the MVP and a few increments after that, and that's it. Why? Because once you put this MVP in the hands of the users, they're going to give you feedback, and that feedback is more valuable than what you think they're going to say. So here they say, oh, I have back pain, and then you're going to switch, or the next product increment is something else that doesn't give back pain. And maybe you evolve your product until you have that vision, which usually is not the case. Usually you don't reach exactly the vision you have in your Lean Inception. You reach something much better that reaches what your customers really want. I'll give you more examples because this concept is very important. And I know that you need to go back to your company and convince people, hey, we need to be working on the MVP style. Therefore, I need to give you a few more examples. Two amazing examples, right? And it's always good to get the example of someone that was very successful. First, the Apple. Steve Jobs, a perfectionist. Everybody knows like working with Steve Jobs was not easy. I have a friend that was on his team when he delivered iPhone. Look what he did with the iPhone delivery. iPhone, it was an MVP. There were proof of concepts before, but the first iPhone that came out, it was an incomplete product. They had a vision for everything they want on iPhone, but that first one was an MVP, was incomplete, but was like a cupcake. What was incomplete about it? The App Store, which was a huge thing, it was not ready. The only apps that were running on the first iPhone were internal Apple apps. Even though they have released how the apps would work, the whole platform was not ready. But he was able to measure the interest if people were interested in building apps for the Apple platform. He was able to measure if people would use the new interface with the fingers. He was able to measure if people want to share pictures. He was validating a lot of hypotheses with that iPhone, which was very incomplete. For example, there was a copy-paste bug, And this colleague of mine that worked there asked him, we need 3 more weeks because of the firmware time to release to all devices again. He did not wait, even though it was a huge bug. He could not do copy paste. Was he wrong, Steve Jobs? When someone tells in your project, no, I want the whole thing, I don't want the MVP. You need those comparisons. Say, look, Steve Jobs didn't wait and iPhone is a huge success. You have to understand that MVP, it is the thing you put on the hands of the users to get some learning, but you keep on incrementing and augmenting that product. Let's switch to another example. You might have heard about this site, thefacebook.com. Yeah, it was a very simple site. I was a developer back in those days, very simple to do something like this. You use a simple framework with a very simple UI. I could do a UI like this, that nothing. But what he did, in one Saturday, he built something. He did not release to the whole world. He shared only with his colleagues from software engineering in MIT, only the classmates. He copied the email address of his colleagues on the database of Facebook and sent an email to them. Hey, do you want to share the picture from last weekend party? And he measured how would people behave about this new idea. And then he did build, measure, learn cycle. And then he shared with everybody that had an email on the database from software engineers. Then he met a student, by coincidence, is a Brazilian, Eduardo, that was studying economics. And then they compared if economics people would behave as like software engineering people. And then they shared the same thing with those 2 different types of users. And then they opened to everybody that had an email at MIT.com. They didn't need to control and have in the database anymore. They only controlled the email domain. And then they did this with MIT and Harvard to verify it's something only specific to the city. Let's write 2 colleges. And then they opened to all the colleges in the US, only controlling the domain. And then colleges in the US and colleges in Europe. Several build, measure, learn cycles. In fact, when I was in ThoughtWorks Brazil, I did run a Lean Inception for Facebook in Brazil for one feature within Facebook. Super easy, because until today, they think about what is the minimal viable thing, how we're going to open it to a small crowd and then bigger crowd until it opens to everybody else. That's the main idea on MVP. Another example that I want to give, because I am Brazilian, Easy Tax. This is 2011, when I started with Lean Inception. I was very involved on the startup weekends. Vinicius and Thales, they got 2nd place on the startup weekend. They got like 500 bucks reais, like less than now 70 euros, 60 euros. He could not quit their job. What did Vinicius do, which was the technical person? He wrote easytax.com.br. They got the domain, website only. We call a tax for you. What's your name? What's the address? What's your phone number? And a button, call the taxi now. That button was HTML code mail to Vinicius with that information. And then they got those 70 bucks bought into Bing AdWords for everyone in one small neighborhood that would search for a tax co-op phone number. With this, they validated the MVP, they got the learning, they got the insights, build, measure, learn, build the next version. The next one pivoted a few times. To pivot is change directions based on the learning you got from the real usage. So that's the main idea. It's either a new idea or feature ideas within a product or existing product or a legacy system. You want to build something. What is that? Get a group of people, align on what is that about. That's the MVP. Put in the hands of the final users to decide we continue this direction. We pivot because the data show us we're not wrong, but there's some learning. Let's switch the strategic direction, or we cancel. The data show us our strategy was totally off. But what about the minimum viable? That word is very important. Like, I don't want to use too many different words, minimal lovable, minimal testable. For me, it's like, it's all about the same concept. We all want the same thing. But there's something about viability. I'll give you yet another example. That one's even easier to correlate to digital projects. If you were to build a bridge, let's say you're going to build a bridge in a river here close to Madrid, where I'm living right now. an engineer would come and would make all the calculus and say, oh, we're going to build a huge bridge here and everybody's going to cross. In digital products, we're going to build a bridge. Yes, we do have digital architects or architects of information, this kind of people. What do they say? Oh, I think the bridge is here. Maybe the business person is going to say, oh, I think the bridge should be there because it's going to give me more money for this market. Whatever is the reason, put a few wood beams on different places and measure where are people crossing more. That's where you should build a bridge. That's the MVP. The MVP main idea is not to allow everybody to cross. It's to get learning for you to make a better informed decision. And then you go to the next product increment or MVP if you want to call. Now it's a little bigger. More people can cross at the same time. Maybe a bicycle, a motorbike can cross. And then you go to the next increment. Those are product increments, but they should go on the build, measure, learn cycle. And then this happens. No, this cannot happen. What is the problem here? Well, in this region, there are truck drivers and they want to cross the bridge. When it was a little small bridge, they cannot cross. Now that they see a car going through, guess what? They're going to go through as well. So if your bridge cannot handle like 5 tons, cannot handle a weight of vehicles from that region, it's a problem of your bridge. So that's not an MVP that allows this to happen. So for this to be MVP, have something that don't allow this to happen. I don't want to talk about the engineer solution, but the people that know the users, they should know that, hey, there are truck drivers here and the truck weighs 5 tons. If the bridge don't handle this weight, engineers figure out, do something. And the business people should be concerned because if the bridge breaks, guess what? It's your brand that's going down with the bridge. So yes, the MVP should consider the business perspective, the user experience perspective, and the technology part behind it, the engineer part behind it. So the MVP, it's on that magical intersection there. What's valuable to the business, usable or lovable by your users, and feasible that the engineers can do that minimum thing. The MVP is there. But it's hard to find that intersection. When you go to build your cupcake, you cannot build first what's feasible and this and this and this. And at the end, you have the wow factor like the iPhone. Since the beginning, it's like a cupcake. The cherry needs to be there. The experience of the iPhone got to be amazing, even though the product is incomplete. So when you think, plan, and release and put the MVP in the hands of your final users, it must have all those factors: feasible, valuable, usable, and wow. You must have the wow factor. Why? It is an incomplete product. So I don't care you're giving complete product. Like I'm giving a cupcake. You know, I know the person wants to buy a wedding cake, but I'm giving a cupcake. But that cupcake got to bring the wow factor. So my user, my client, come back to me and say, "Yes, I want more," and give you insight on how to increase, how to augment your product. I used to be a developer. So it's very hard because when you think about the MVP, you're thinking about the overall cake, the product solution. You got to think about the internal architecture. I know it's very hard because you think about the overall architecture, but you cannot build it because you're releasing only a cupcake. But the way you release it, it's not like on this, oh, I'm going to release a few internal components. No, you got to release a thin slice of your solution. That's the cupcake. Even though the internal architecture, it's still incomplete. But yes, that's MVP. The architecture goes hand in hand with the MVP evolution. And from the business side, thanks God there's business people because they think of, okay, how we're going to run a business based on the evolution of this thing we're working on together. You cannot just prove like business all has a kind of sales funnel or some sort of funnel that brings revenue to the company or recurring revenue, which is even more important. You cannot only figure out one layer. Like I did run a few Lean Inceptions to clients where they're like, "Whoa, amazing. We got 10,000 downloads per week." And that was about it. Why? We did not prove the whole funnel. What we need to do is like, and that's what I ask from the business people involved on the Lean Inceptions. Let us figure out how can we have this MVP to help validate the business hypothesis. It's not how many people download. It's like from all those that download, how many have used and are referring our product, even though We're not making enough money yet, but the results prove us we're going in a good direction. Okay, so how to decide this is the MVP? It's really hard. You have those three different perspectives: business, user experience, and technology. It's hard. Each one's pointing in a different direction. I'll tell you, as a technologist, I'll tell you, oh, I need the Inception to be very technical because it's a very technical product and I want to have all technical activities. That's a Lean Inception from a technical point of view only. Well, the business person is going to say, oh, I need OKR sessions, and you figure out all the OKRs, tell the results and go and build it. And I know what's the MVP. And the person representing the final user will tell you, I know exactly, I did the research for 5 weeks. I know exactly what users love. So I will tell you what's the MVP. Guess what? We need to put all these people in the room to figure out what is the MVP. And that's not easy. That's why we need help. That's why I want to help each other. I want to help the facilitators of those collaborative workshops. I want to help with Lean Inception. So that's what happened on Lean Inception. I like those pictures because it's from the old world, before March. Now we have the same thing on the new world, virtual collaborative rooms, but it's totally doable. I've been doing this since March. So that's what happened on the Lean Inception. So now let's go in a little bit of detail on the Lean Inception. Okay, first thing about Lean Inception, I won't stop in those two. Before something happened, it's either understanding, project portfolio selection, discovery from the double diamond, and then it comes this phase where we need to align and define what's the MVP. On the double diamonds, the define phase. And after that, we align and define what is the MVP. We have a small plan to start with, and then you're going to design and deliver. I'm just simplifying things so you can connect where does Lean Inception fits on the, on your world. So who participates on the Lean Inception? You have different types of people that have different perspectives. So it's everybody interested on that initiative. So you get everybody together on a very collaborative workshop because they're from different perspectives and they're trying to find that intersection. So it has to be a collaborative workshop going through the Lean Inception agenda. I will explain the Lean Inception in here, I think in 5-10 minutes, because all these are on blog posts at the book itself. So it's easier for you to take a look at this later on the book. First, the agenda. That for me is the perfect agenda for Lean Inception. So we need to be very aware. There are 3 different perspectives that we need to align. It's not easy to align 3 different perspectives in one day. If you only have one day, guess what's going to happen? You're not aligned 3 perspectives. One of them is going to make decisions. Go, this is the MVP, go build. 2 days, the same thing. You do need a few days. Like for me, this is the perfect agenda. It's 5 days. Let's go day by day. First, I'll talk about why the kickoff and showcase are in different colors. Kickoff and showcase, those are for the stakeholders and the active team members. Who are the stakeholders? People that are very interested in the direction, the result of the Lean Inception, but they don't have time. They cannot stay with us the whole time. In fact, they most likely won't stay the whole time this week and the weeks going forward. Those are stakeholders. If I can make a joke, people that have money but does not have time. Those are stakeholders. They have money, they don't have time to stay with us. Usually the other people, the active team members, they have time. They're going to be working. They're the squads, they're the design team, the POs, like they're the people, quality engineers, the engineers, they're the people involved, very interested on the result of this initiative. They're going to be together the whole week, trying to understand what is that magic intersection. Okay, very important point. If you are a stakeholder, come here in the beginning of the Inception, tell us the beautiful words, the main sponsor, oh, why we're here together this week. A facilitator, maybe myself, if I'm facilitating our Inception, I'll give you a short explanation of what is the MVP, what are the activities we're going to go through this week, and I'll invite all the stakeholders back on Friday afternoon, because we're going to share with you the plan, what we think is a good plan for the MVP and the product increments, because we need to verify and align with you. Does this plan make sure for you? From your speech, yes, you get the speech, but now you have something in front of you. Tell us if this is okay. And it's also aligned with the other projects and other areas that you have information we don't. So it's very important, the kickoff and the showcase. Okay, now the first day, the Monday, this is more the business perspectives. We're gonna, all those activities are collaborative with everybody together. The first one's about the product vision. We're gonna write it collaboratively. Then we're gonna do an activity, what it is. Now we know the product, like imagine a product, it is in a box. What's the name of the box? We now know the vision for that box. Okay, it has a name most likely, what it is, what it's not, what it does not do. All these more from the business perspective. Day 2, let's talk about the personas, the people involved on the context in this area where this box is gonna live, maybe the users. Most of the time are the users, sometimes are internal people involved on that as well. Who are those personas? Where do they live? How do they behave? What are their needs? Let's do an activity to share information about those personas. It's very important, the word share. I'm not replacing great UX research that should have been done before. I'm just doing here a session to share the information. Why? Because here we have together 3 different perspectives. People from UX that they might have this information, engineers that might have some data on the database, and business people. We need to share what's our current understanding of those personas. Hopefully it's not hypothetical understanding, because we did do some customer research before. If you haven't done any research, yes, it's going to be what we share. We believe those personas are like. Then in the afternoon, what are the user journeys? They step by step, they go through to achieve one of their goals. The second day, it's all about their personas and their needs. And then the third day, let's do a feature brainstorming. Now that we went one day, talk about a lot of business goals, the other day, persona needs and their journeys. Let's look at those and say, hey, how do we improve their lives? You can look at the journeys and say, oh, here there's a feature, here there's a feature. Here there's a moment they would interact with our product. That's an idea of a feature. Go back into the product vision. Oh, here I think there is a feature for us. Open feature brainstorming. In the afternoon, you do a review, a business, UX, and technical review for each one of those features. Please notice that up to this moment, you're not yet making the decision about the MVP, because it's very hard to decide the MVP. But for each one of those feature ideas, in isolation, you make a review for them. Now it's a little easier because we understand what each other mean by this feature, by, oh, in print invoice, invite Facebook friend, whatever it is, the feature now becomes a little more clear for everybody. And then on Thursday, that's the moment you start making the strategies about your product, where you're going to build, what is the MVP, how do you increment it. So go back to those user journeys now that you have more detail about the feature, and tell us how, in which step of this journey you're improving the customer experience with this feature idea. Make it visible. And then after doing that, let's build together the sequence. In which order should we go about creating those features? And now I ask, what is the MVP? You don't want to show an order where at the end you have a tractor to cut grass. You want to order where you have a scissors as the first combination of features, and that's the MVP. You can go a little beyond, like, okay, that's the MVP. What are the next increments? What are the features that come after that? If there is another product increment you want to call out, make a post-it note and show, okay, here there's another one that we need to talk about. Now, on the next day, you go and you build your MVP canvas, where you go in more detail. What is this MVP about? I'm not only talking about the functional pieces of it. Now it's very clear. It's easier to talk about MVP because now you understand the building blocks. But let's look at this canvas that brings the overall perspective of the MVP, and then you end with the showcase. So I'll just show the pictures of some of those activities. This activity comes from Jeffrey Moore on his book, Crossing the Cows. It's a really good for who? What's the problem this person has? Start with the who, like who we're trying to fix. Give a name. That box has a name. What is that box? It's an app, it's a collection of APIs, it's a microservice, it's a platform. What is that thing? What's the main key benefits, the main characteristics? Why would customers want to buy it? It's different from, how are the users living without this today? It's a competitor, it's your old legacy. Our product, what's the main differentiator? One thing very interesting from all those activities, I'm very influenced from design thinking. A lot of them, they open and then they close, open and then they close. You're going to realize this as you go through each activity. The product vision is very positive, open. Right after it, what it is, what it's not, what it does not do. This is going to help you later on with future brainstorming. But now it's like reducing a little the scope and improving the conversations about, okay, what is this product? What it's not. Then you go in the personas. You open again, oh, what are all the personas and their needs? And then you have a conversation, who are the most important personas? And then you do the most important journeys of the most important personas. It's very interesting because you don't have a lot of time. It's only one afternoon. You cannot cover all the product use cases. You're going to cover the most important journeys for the most important personas. You're again like open and closing, open and closing. The next day, you open again the feature brainstorming. A lot of feature ideas are going to show up. Right after it, you go through a tech, UX, and business review. As a facilitator, I'm going to grab one of those features. I'm going to ask just to the team, first the graph. Do you know how to do it? Have you done it before? Okay. Do you know what we want from it? Now I look more to the business people and the UX people. You that represent the business, you that represent the users, do you know what you want from it? Yes, I know exactly what I want. I have research data, or I know I'm the business person, I'm going to use it. I know I want like this. If it's high and high, green, it's like a green sign, like green. If someone's like medium yellow, or both are like this, red. The color shows the uncertainty level. That's the only thing the color does. What is the certainty level of this feature? And then that table underneath it, it's for relative comparison. I don't want absolute comparison. We are still on the Lean Inception phase. I'm not giving you exactly the backlog of work in user story level with due dates and everything. So for this feature and this feature, feature A and B, which one requires more effort? Oh, B, how many more? 2 times more, 3 times? 1, 2, or 3? Oh, this is 1A, this is 3A. What about the business value? Imagine this exists in isolation. How much more value to the business this would bring compared to this one? Oh, this one is more, this one is 3, this one is 2. Cool. What about the user? How much more would the user love this feature compared to this one? It's a relative comparison table. I don't want an absolute answer. This is faster, and then you avoid the deadlocks of, oh, let's talk about exactly business value. Let's talk about exactly estimation. We're not talking this. We're only comparing things. And you end up doing a review, because when you compare, you need to go a little bit in detail about the architecture, about the business numbers, and the information you have about the users. After that, look back at the journeys, and that's what this picture, like someone was reading the journey and someone said, look, there we have that feature. Put that green feature there. We're going to improve the user experience on that moment. That's what you do with journeys and features. And then after that, you can build your sequencer where, okay, in which order should you go about building those features, building and releasing it. And once they start putting it, I ask as a facilitator, where is the MVP? Once they tell me, oh, here's the MVP, then we go in details about this Canva. Okay, what's the purpose of this MVP? Oh, the purpose of this MVP is to validate if people from that neighborhood will call a taxi online. Cool. Segmented personas. We built a website, .com.br. It's for everyone in Brazil? No. Oh, it's for the taxi drivers, for the co-op people? No, it's only for people calling the taxi. Well, it's very segmented. It's like Mark Zuckerberg, like, oh no, it's only the software engineer people in MIT. Yes, that's what you want to do. Like segment and test it. The feature's done. If it goes well, you open it later on. Journey, which journeys you're improving? I know the conversation between the folks from Easy Tax. One was saying, no, the first release, we should solve the problem of the payment because some people don't have money, have credit card. Oh, we should solve the problem and the experience for the co-op that cannot handle the phone, but like she should receive the email. No, this journey is only for the person calling the taxi. That's it. Let's first validate that hypothesis, then we validate other hypotheses. What's the expected result? Well, with that $70, we can buy 100,000 appearance of our ad. We expect that from 100,000, at least 10% would click on it. And from those, we expect that at least 20% of those would send an email to Vinicius. And from those 20%, that many should get a taxi. We send an NPS questionnaire for them, and we expect that they would recommend for the whatever, Those are the expected results. That's the metrics to help validate those business hypotheses. After you're done all of this, then you can talk about cost and schedule. That's your MVP canvas. And what's the most important artifact? It's the people. It's not an artifact. I know the sequencer, the graph, or the review, the canvas is amazing. But the secret of the success is not the MVP plan itself. It's the people. The people that they got together and they have a plan, they will make the plan a success, because the plan will pivot a lot of times. The most important thing of the Lean Inception is the collaborative nature of people getting together, working together, respecting each other to make a better informed decision. So what happens on the Lean Inception? I told you in the beginning of the context, I was very influenced from Silicon Valley, like Agile, it's on the blood for me. Like design thinking, one school of thinking, like Jeff Bezos school of thinking, and the other side, Lean Startup. Lean Startup is like, okay, don't talk to the users, build something, not a prototype, put it in the hands of the user. Then validate your hypothesis. Design think people, user-centric design, research, talk to the users, have prototype, ask them a lot of questions. Based on what you know about the users, decide on what to build. Look what happened on the MVP canvas. From one side, based on what you know about your users, you're building something. What's the minimum necessary that you know from them to keep on validating? On the other side is right the opposite. It's build, measure, learn. You're building something to get some learning. So I don't know your school of thought, if you're more of a design thinker or a lean startup. Despite of that, once you start work with MVP, you and your team and your enterprise will be working on continuous build, measure, learn cycle, where you augment your product based on real usage and insights provided by your users. So that's what Lean Inception brings together, those two ideas of lean startup and design thinking working hand in hand. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Q&A. Before going to the Q&A, first, thank you for your time. Thank you. You're here because you and I, we have similar thoughts. We like the same thing. That's why we're talking about this. The book's available on Amazon. I have a lot of posts on Lean Inception on my blog. And I did create a step-by-step PDF. I didn't have time to put on the blog. It's a very structured step-by-step that I can share. The book I cannot share. And I found the easiest way to share it is if you leave a comment on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn, if you put caroli.org, the first article is going to be this one. And then if you leave a comment there, I will know your name. I'll send you this PDF. So once again, thank you. And now we are ready for a good conversation.
Thanks so much, Caroli. That was awesome. And I don't know if you noticed, there's a lot going on in the chat. We have quite an active discussion and already some questions to share.
Awesome.
I'll read them out in a second. I just wanted to remind everyone, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Yeah, okay, so the first question was from Reiner. And the question is, does the first version of a product that can be released to the users really need to be viable? What about releasing, for example, a painted door test?
I think it's more about the words. On the second book by Eric Ries, the first book, he calls everything MVP. So I understand where your question comes from. The second release, he calls experiment and MVP. For me, if your MVP has a P of a product, it has to be viable because your brand is on it. But you should have like a lot of experiments before having that P of a product. It's exactly your example. So this is a good question. I don't think the first thing in front of the users needs to be viable, but if it is a product, yes, it needs to be viable. But do run lots of experiments, and those can be simpler than even simpler than an MVP, which is viable.
Cool. Thanks so much, Caroli. All right. The next question is from Frederick. how do you differentiate between prototypes and MVPs, and why?
Okay, different school of thoughts. So prototype, you want to figure out the UI. Is this going in a good direction, the UI? MVP, you're validating the business hypothesis strategy. So when I talk about MVP and I make a decision about MVP, I'm not locking myself on a UI or a prototype. You can combine both. You can figure out what is the MVP and then think about what is a good prototype for this MVP. But those are not necessarily the same. I can be very clear what is the MVP, which feature should be there, what I want to validate without knowing the prototype. And that's okay. And you can have a prototype that might not validate a business hypothesis as well. And that's okay. And sometimes you might have people that combine both methodologies. For example, if you combine Lean Inception with design sprint, run a little bit of the Lean Inception design sprint, you end up with a prototype that validates MVP. The goals are different. Prototype, you're validating the UI. MVP, you're validating the business hypothesis. Combining both, it's amazing. You validate the business hypothesis via a prototype. Thanks.
All right, great. The next question is from, I'm not sure if it's Yara or Jara, and I apologize if I did mispronounce your name. The question is, do you have a tool to build the personas and the user journey?
I have a few that I use, but there are a lot of good tools to build personas and journeys, like thanks God, because of the design thinking movement. That part of the personas and the journeys, like there's so many nice variations. On the Lean Inception itself, I like a simple variation, like personas. I don't have here in the presentation, but like sometimes when it was presential, I would get A4 paper, split in 4. In one, I would be like, let's draw a persona, you know, like draw, make it a drawing so it's more real. Like nowadays with the online canvases we have, people put a picture, it's even nicer. Give it a nickname, a good nickname, not a bad one. So we talk about a persona, real person. In one quadrant, I like to talk about, okay, how old's the persona? What's their role? Single, married, has kids, Brazilians, like give information, demographic information about that persona. And another quadrant, let's talk about behavior, super important. Because people from different roles, like they behave totally different, like, and you want to build something for human beings, not for robots. So let's talk about this person we're talking about, how does she behave? And then let's talk about the needs. The needs, we're talking the needs on the context of the Lean Inception, right? We're not, it's different than doing a persona activity on a discovery phase, which is much more broader. When you run the persona activity in the Lean Inception, it's a persona activity. You might use the same template, but the goal and the intention is within the context of that Lean Inception. So that's an example of one artifact for persona. And for journeys, the one I prefer the best is Post-its. One persona has one goal. What is the goal? Oh, my goal is to play soccer with friends on the weekend. Cool. Now let's go step by step of things that I do until I am playing soccer on the weekend. And then each step is a different Post-it. From the perspective of the persona, not from the product perspective or the technical perspective, neither the business perspective. The persona, oh, I wake up Friday 10 a.m. because I'm hangover from last night. And then I feel bad because, you know, my beer belly is growing. And then at lunchtime, I talk to a friend about soccer. And then he tells me that he knows us. You go, put this Post-it by Post-it until you reach the goal. That's an example of a simple way to draw a user journey.
Thanks a lot. All right. The next question comes from Reiner. How do you strive for making your MVP really minimal in this process? When is the time to challenge each other to cut out requirements?
There are two moments for that. And that's why I follow this order of the inception. Why? Because a lot of people have their ideas, their feature ideas. So it's very hard for you to start first day. Let's talk about the MVP, because then you're going to cut people short. So instead of that, Day one, let's listen to business. Day two, let's talk about the personas. Day three, let's have a feature brainstorming. Like even the engineers will bring a lot of ideas. Amazing. Day four, let's put it in sequence. When you put it in sequence, you have put in an order. I'm not saying that the things are not important, but what are we working on first? Cool. And then that already reduce and help you define the MVP. You think this is good enough for, oh, those 4 features are the MVP. Then the next day, when you go to the MVP canvas, now you talk about the purpose of the MVP. You might look again at those features and say, can we simplify it even a little more? Can this, I don't know, add the soccer field? Instead of being a feature, can I just add directly on the database or static HTML? You might even simplify a little more. So those are the 2 moments to simplify. And it's easier to do this at the end. After we work together for 1 week, you listen to my ideas, listen to yours. Now I'm okay to simplify and make those compromises. If you try to simplify from day 1, day 2, it's very hard. Good questions.
Thanks, Crowley. The next one is from Henrique. I'm so sorry if or Enrique. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. The question, where does the user problems come in during the Lean Inception?
Personas activities. Well, the product vision. When you have a vision of the product, it should be hopefully a vision to solve a product. Like that sentence for the users who have a problem, that will show up in the first sentence. It show up there a little bit from the product vision perspective. And on day 2, when you talk about the persona needs, usually a persona need is to either overcome a problem or to fulfill one of their goals or benefit. So this should show up either day 1 or 2. That's why it's very important. Like I'm invited to facilitate some inception that people say, oh, I already have a list of requirements. Let's start from day 3. And I say, no, like we do need this. And they're like, no. UX people already did a lot of research. I have my list. I think it's very important too. Let's look at it and think about what problems are we solving for the personas in this context specifically.
Cool. Thank you very much. All right. The next question is from Frank. How would you compare Lean Inception to Jake Knapp's design sprint approach?
Nice. I have a huge coincidence. Like I did spend 1 year at Google. At the same time, Jake Knapp was there. We almost coincide on the same team. He went to one team, I went to one next to him. I'm glad we did not coincide because we would have influenced each other a lot. Jake Knapp is more of a designer. I was more of a developer. Jake Knapp worked in Google itself, and then he went to Google Ventures. I work on ThoughtWorks, which is a consultancy going to large corporations. I need, look what happened to me. I need to help bring together the business needs, the information that's come from UX people that became more famous from 2011 to now. Like last decade, there was no UX people. Now it's a reality. And the technologies, which we are very strong in ThoughtWorks. We're good and everything, but we're very strong technologists. So the Lean Inception, I need to bring those 3 perspectives together. But I did not want to lock myself in the UI because I still need to validate the MVP instead of deciding the UI. If I decided the UI, I'm kind of writing the user stories. I'm telling you what, why, and how. It goes a little more than the MVP needs. So the Lean Inception is to align a group of people about the MVP. The design sprint is for the design team to explore options and decide one prototype. Those are very different. The Lean Inception, usually it's a larger group of people. Why? Because we have representatives from the business, from UX, and from engineers. It's a little more difficult to facilitate. Design sprint is the design team seeking a prototype. They explore a few options, different prototypes. They put in front of a few representative users. They make a few decisions and they decide which one's the winning prototype. On the Lean Inception, it's not like this. I need the 3 perspectives. Therefore, it's a little harder to facilitate because I want to make decisions. On the design sprint, on the first day, Jake Knapp asks, who is the decision maker? Because if at the end we got to make a decision, either A or B, I need to know who is the decision maker. On the Lean Inception, I do not want to know who's the decision maker, because we should not have decision makers, and we should postpone making decisions. Let's share information, and only at the end we align about the MVP. We're not making a decision of a prototype. Another commonality they have, it's the 5-day length. Yes, a collaborative workshop you cannot do in a few hours. You need a few days. So they're similar, they're complementary. Some companies, they are using a Lean Inception. Once they figure out the MVP, they run a design sprint, and then you have an amazing, everybody aligned, and then you get mostly the design team to figure out what is the best prototype.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
The next question is from Henrique. Where do the user problems come in during the Lean Inception? How do you know which problems to solve and which ones are the most important ones?
They come on the personas, as we talked previously. I don't know which ones to solve, which ones are most important. But when you get 20 people in the room and they will sequence the features, they will decide which feature are more important to go first. But they'll look at 3 perspectives: users, business, and technology. And how do we know this is the best one or not? We don't. That's the beauty of MVP. Despite if though this is the best feature or not, it is MVP, it's something small, it's a cupcake, really fast, you're gonna put in the hands of the user, and the real data is gonna tell you, yes, we solved the problem, or no, we didn't. Move on, let's try something else. You can't know until the user is using.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question is from Paul. If the USP are more cost-efficient processes than the current market leader, how much of it must be implemented to really prove it?
USP, user story planning.
Paul, maybe if you want to either, you can unmute yourself if you want to make that more clear, or you can enter in the chat if you're in the, I'm seeing it in the chat, unique selling point.
Okay, can you repeat the question then?
Yeah, of course. If the unique selling point, I guess, are more cost-efficient processes than the current market leader, how much of it must be implemented to really prove it?
Good question. I don't know. That's why you need like really good business people along with technical and user representatives, and they will figure out that. And that's very interesting. Like I've been in a lot of inceptions, so I do have a feeling and an opinion, but as a facilitator, I don't give it. And sometimes I get inceptions from different clients, like very similar problems, and they have different strategies and different results and MVP. But that's okay, because that's their strategy and that's the MVP that they want to test on that context, on that moment. So whatever the group decides, that's the best decision, because it was a group and aligned decision. So it's very hard to tell if a strategy is good or bad. I'll tell afterwards. If I look back to the place I've been at and they're very successful, I'm like, wow, amazing strategic decision. If I look back and things went, well, there's the thing. If they work with MVP, things don't go that bad, because they work like for a month and a half. They either pivot and you'll try to find success, or they'll cancel. So now when we go bad, it means like, okay, it's canceled because we proved it didn't work. And for me, that's not a bad thing. It's an amazing thing that you're not wasting a lot of time and money.
Cool, thank you. All right, the next question is from Engie. How do we decide the most important personas?
Well, one person cannot decide it. The main idea is, let's say you have a group of 15 people on your Lean Inception. I assume that, let's say at least 3 of them are UX people that did some research before. When the moment comes to the persona, as a facilitator, I'll say, okay, I'll split the whole group into 3 groups of 5 people. And then I'll put 1 UX person in each group. And I'll say, look, go in your individual rooms. You have 20 minutes, come back and tell us about one specific persona you think it's important. They will decide in their group what is important. They'll present to each other. Now we have 3 personas that were presented. I will create 3 groups again, 1 UX person each group, but like I'll shake the group again. Okay, let's go again and create 3 more personas. Maybe at this moment, they're going to talk all together. Oh, who should we do? Who do you think it's more important? The group's going to have this conversation. You do run it a few times. You end with like 6, 9, 12 personas. It's a lot of persona, but some of them like have very similar roles or needs. And then we say, okay, let's group those personas. As a facilitator, I won't tell people how to group them. I'll just say, what about grouping those personas? People talk about and they will find a way to group them. Usually they group by the needs. And then you group, now you have like, let's say 5 clusters of personas. Now you can run an activity to prioritize. Okay, let's say that we can fulfill the needs for only 2 of those personas. Each one of you have 2 votes. Which ones would you vote for? That's it. And now you end up like not prioritizing, but sharing what each one thought is the most important persona. That's one way to go about it. But again, collaborative. It's not a one person deciding. If someone has a very strong opinion, talk about it and try to convince the other 14 people that, hey, this person is really important for us for this reason. But you shouldn't have something in the method to decide that's the most important person. Have the tools to help the facilitator facilitate the decision for the group.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so the next question comes from Andreas. And the question is, how does Lean Inception relate to Lean UX from your point of view?
Lean UX is an amazing book, right? I think it's from 2006. Lean UX, I think, influenced a lot of us that really like UX. It gave it a name, to UX, and UX is close to Agile and Lean. And I think the book made it very clear how to make those combinations. But Lean Inception is a method. Lean UX, for me, it's a lot of practice and a mindset. Lean Inception is more, here's a recipe, where you start with a group of people that need to align about the MVP, and then they end with the MVP. When I read Lean UX and then Lean Enterprise from, I'm friends with both of the authors, right? Jeff and Barry O'Reilly and Jess Humble. My feeling as a consultant that I was going to the clients and trying a different kind of inception, I tried several times to start with the hypothesis, kind of hypothesis-driven development, as they say on Lean UX and on Lean Enterprise. But I had a hard time because like, okay, hypothesis-driven development, the conversation would go towards the business only. The hypothesis would be towards the business. And then what do we do about the hypothesis? How do I break it to fulfill the needs of the personas and the features? I had a really hard time. So I shift the order. So on the Lean Inception, hypothesis is very important for the MVP, but only at the end you talk about the MVP. And then when you fill the MVP canvas, that's heavily influenced by Lean UX and Lean Enterprise, because half of that canvas, it's similar to Lean UX or hypothesis-driven development. But I shift the order. So Lean Inception, it's a method because it has a sequence of activities that help you at the end align a group of people about MVP. Lean UX is a mindset and a set of good Lean UX practice. And it's an amazing book for a good friend as well.
All right, so Pandora is asking the next question, which is established clients may struggle reducing features to an MVP as the product has to reflect well on the brand. How to find the right balance?
Amazing question. Yes, it's very hard for people to suddenly, they have a list, they have in their mind, they want a lot of things. And like no one, well, usually big clients, big corporations, they don't want a scissors, a cupcake. They're used to planning big cakes. That's the magic about the sequencer, because on the Lean Inception, we talk about a lot of features. 2 magics or shifts that I did. When I was working to low-level requirements, low level for me, it's a user story where you tell exactly what the user is going to get, the how, the acceptance criteria, and the test. That's low level. When you're talking about a lot of those, was a little hard. You do release plan on low level. Now, when you go up one level to feature level without describing exactly the how I'm going to implement it, I'm just talking about the feature, what it needs to help the user with without describing exactly how I'm going to implement it. And I go through the review. When I go to the sequencer, I'm sequencing those features. So the business is happy because they see, I think about a huge corporation that is not that lean yet and it's not working fully with lean startup. They want to see like the 40 feature ideas in sequence. They're not seeing in a spreadsheet or a Gantt chart, but they are seeing on the sequencer, oh, okay, they're all here. And then after that, they can also take a look on the MVP. So you make both worlds happy, the project world that needs to see the whole sequence, as well as the product world that tells me, look, those 4 first features, they make up the MVP. So you try to make those both worlds live together happily. So whoever's lean startup, focus on the MVP and try to prove the product and its increments and the hypothesis. Whoever's not is keeping an eye on the sequence and say, oh, but I need the whole thing. Once you get data from the user, those two meet and have a conversation. Hey, the data show us that we should change directions. How should we go about it? But that happens after a few weeks after. Good question. Sequencer will take care of this for you, the project old world. So it's important to keep that artifact.
Great, thank you. All right, the next question is from Patrick. From your experience, what are good strategies to convince management in traditional non-tech companies to apply MVP Lean Inception approach instead of traditional Waterfall?
Oof. Oh, I like books. If you make a book club and then like go slowly, hey, and then suddenly like the Lean Startup book, then suddenly a Lean Inception book, that's one way to go about it. But the biggest example I can get is from Brazil, because we started running Lean Inceptions in Brazil 2011. Like I already apologized here. I was only blogging Portuguese. So a lot of those initial concepts, they showed up in Portuguese. So in Brazil, we were using them. And then I realized that around 2016, 2017, it became much more easier for me, I'm a Lean Inception facilitator, to convince people about doing Lean Inception. And that was not because the book was famous, because the book like was released 2018, the latest version of the book was released. What was famous was companies that started using Lean Inception had great results. So sometimes they would hear from their competitors what they were doing differently, or people leave one company to the other, bring the real stories. Hey, we worked with MVP on that company and went really well. So that's what makes the biggest difference, especially the competitor success story. That's the hard part, because like now I moved to Europe and I go to clients and I need to convince them, hey, working this way is nice. They don't know the companies in Brazil. So it's hard for me to say, hey, do you know that company in Brazil? They're using this. Like, no, I don't know that company. I'm like, oh. Then I use the examples of Spotify, Amazon, those are the famous examples that have like, yes, they worked with MVP and they became really successful following this style, which by the way, is not only the beginning. Until today, they follow build, measure, learn cycle. So do you want to be as successful as those companies? That's what I try to sell them, why we should work this way. Good question.
Very cool. Okay, so we're winding down with questions. I have one more, but this is a good opportunity. We've had great questions. If you have something on your mind you want to ask, please put it in the chat, because I think, yeah, we've got several questions that we've answered, which is wonderful. All right, so the question is from Yara. Are you doing workshops virtually? What are the challenges you are seeing? How is Lean Inception online virtually?
Yara, yes. I have to confess, when March came along, I was like, what am I gonna do in my life? Like, I really love the workshops. I love the presential workshop, the energy in the room. I was like, this cannot happen anymore. But at the same time, I had colleagues in China that they were having a hard time, because especially now they need to align and build better products, right? We're in the middle of a crisis. We need to get aligned. It's even more important than before, because before, if you did not align, at least the team was sitting together. Now we don't sit together anymore. So it's really, really important to align at the beginning. So since March, I've been running remote Lean Inceptions. At the beginning, I thought it was not possible, it would be harder. The one thing I realized, it's doable. The tools improved a lot. So you can make a lot of things on the tools, like the virtual walls, the virtual boards, virtual post-it, communication tools, split into rooms. So you can do all the activities within the Lean Inceptions remotely pretty easily. In fact, this week I just released the Lean Inception board on Miro. So right now we have Lean Inception board on Miro, and Miro, two great tools. We're adding 2 more tools as we go and facilitate them on those tools. The only thing I realized, which I need to work on the second edition of the book, on the activities, you need to be a little more careful, because I'll give an example. The persona example I give, okay, let's split into 3 rooms and go and build the personas. And I forgot to tell how you're going to build the personas. If you're in the same room, someone say, hey, which template should I use? I'll say, oh, use this template here. I'll draw and I'll give to everybody. On the remote world, people are on different rooms already. So you cannot go back. Like if you do this, it's going to be a bigger problem, bigger waste of time. So what you have to do, you need to prepare yourself a little bit more. That's why I end up creating this step of a step. It's basically like for me to follow the step by step and don't forget to give the instructions before the activity. And another point is, I'll give another example. When to use a fishbowl. When you have 20 people in the room and you have a conversation everybody listen to, you cannot have 20 people talk at the same time. For example, sometimes you use a fishbowl. Oh, only 4 people talk at the same time. If you want to join the conversation, you join the fishbowl, 1 person leaves. Now in the remote world, it becomes even more important. Like for example, at Zoom, if you talk 5 people at the same time, it's not doable. In a room, you can talk 5, 6 people at the same time, it's still okay. So now it becomes even more important. Which of those facilitation tips should you use in which step of which activity? So on that step-by-step PDF, I put the facilitation tips for the specific moment of the specific activity. And that's the review that I need now to get this PDF and put it back on the book to be more explicit, how to better run the remote workshops, which is unfortunately, our new world.
Thanks a lot, Caroli. So this might be our last question. I'm not seeing any new questions coming in the chat. So Simon's asking, what is a prerequisite in a big organization to scale MVPs? Our MVPs often die in the vertical silos of the organization. Thanks.
Good question. To scale MVPs, here's the thing. I'll try to simplify you, point you to a different framework. For example, the 3 horizon framework. Horizon 1, the big projects that are is the in English, in Portuguese, we call the cows that give you the milk. Those are the big products that give you money. Horizon 2 are the things that might give you money in the future. Those are the MVPs, things you are trying, but like you're already trying with the users. Horizon 3 are experiments, like try crazy new things. Maybe some of them you run a Lean Inception, try to make MVP. There is a shift of process, sometimes even about teams that, hey, this MVP is working well, add 1 more increment, add 1 more increment. This become a bigger product. Now you need to you have the operations team of the product. You start having to handle NPL, return on investment. Some of the theories about project now make sense because it's a bigger thing. So there is different practice that goes from Horizon 2 to Horizon 1. So you need to be aware of this, that when your MVP now becomes a successful product, part of it will go to the Horizon 1, and that change a little bit how you manage that initiative, that product now. So you need to, that's a good question. You need to pay attention to that, and your company should have good process to handle it. It's not a one size fits all. Don't try to to use the same agile practice in all those horizons? Good question, especially if it was a final question. It ended with a bigger view of the
Really,
organization.
we have a new final question, and I
There
don't
you
know
go.
if they're going to keep coming. So this is from Andreas, and it's any tips to introduce Lean Inception in an organization where we do have product development already since years, and the day-to-day case is just to add more features?
It's about alignment. You have a lot of organizations nowadays that have, oh, we do have UX, we do have this data, or we have the product organized very well. Usually, despite of having like one of those perspectives, a strong group with a lot of information data, usually what lacks is the alignment. You have a squad, you have a team, usually people are not aligned and they're not motivated. If myself as a developer, I was not on that inception, the way I'm going to behave on that team is very different than, oh, let's say you, the product people, and you, the business person, made all the decisions, and now you only give me a feature to work on and tell, oh, this is the OKR, write the user stories. Yeah, I'll do it, but like I'll feel just like I'm just coding. If you invite me for those 3 days workshop, I'll feel included, but not only included, I'm going to participate in it. I'm going to understand everything that goes on that product, that MVP, and I understand everything that did not get in there. I'm going to be very committed on this piece of work, very committed and very aligned. So that for me is the magic. It's about alignment. It's about collaboration. It's not about only generating one artifact. Maybe the MVP canvas, if you're an amazing product person by yourself in the room, you're going to write an amazing MVP canvas. But the question is like, how do you get 20 people aligned that this is an amazing MVP canvas and we all should be working on this? And in 3 weeks, I'm going to get back to the group with real insights. And together we are going to decide the next step. Even though you're the product person, you're going to influence a lot. You're bringing the team along. And that's a huge difference between, so when you walk in the organization and you see a happy team and you see a team that's only coding, for me, that's the biggest difference.
Cool. Thank you again. It appears that question was the last question. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your insights, and gosh, thank you to the audience for all these thoughtful, interesting questions. So I would give you the opportunity if you want to say any final last words. Yeah, but again, just a big thank you from our side. That was so cool.
Jen, I want to repeat what you said. I want to say thank you, like, from the ThoughtWorks perspective, that's what we are. We like exchange informations, like we are a big community, and thank you for participating. Thank you for sharing the same challenge that we share, and together we help each other, and let's help make better teams, better organizations with more collaborative work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just to let you know, everyone joining the call, a lot of people have been asking about the recording. The session is recorded, and people who RSVP'd going or yes on Meetup will receive the recording. So if you missed a part or something, but thanks again, everyone. Have a great evening, and yeah,